All right, another week,
Another week. Welcome back to my first rodeo. I'm Liv.
and I am Mike.
Yeehaw.
Yeehaw, indeed. How you doing?
I am doing so well. I'm so tired, but I'm ready to do this. I'm ready to talk. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. Excited to see you. Sorry you're tired. Are you like punchy tired or just exhausted tired?
I'm just like so tired that I'm not tired.
Oh,
You
I
know
got
what?
so
You know when
tired you
that
can't
happens?
sleep.
Yeah, like at night, I've been happy lately, and when I'm happy, I have like really deep thoughts before I go to bed, and I think of inventions and things that bother me and
Right?
all these life-changing things, and I just think about them all night, and then I wake up and I'm like, I don't want to do any of that.
Yeah. I get so tired that I can't sleep when I'm in Las Vegas. You ever get like so tired you're just exhausted and you've been up 24 hours
Yeah.
and then you lay down and you still can't sleep.
Yeah, I become like a different person now. Like I like want to do things in the world, like big things.
I see. What big thing you want to do now?
I want to create an invention. So I was outside picking up leaves the other day,
Right.
and like you have a rake in one hand,
Yeah.
and then you have your other real hand.
Right.
Then when you
That's
lean,
the other one's a fake hand. I did not realize that
then-
about you.
yeah, when you lean down to pick up the leaves, you use the rake in your other hand.
Okay.
But what if you had like a pooper scooper rake, you know, where it's like
Ah,
you could put like a glove on a rake on both hands, so then you have like mega hands, so when you pick
Right.
up leaves, it could be just more efficient.
So you've already raked them and now you're just picking them up.
Yeah, like
It's a
they're
big
in a
shovel
pile.
kind of thing.
Yeah,
or-
like a shovel, because you know how pooper scoopers, you do
Yeah.
at the same time, but imagine that with like rakes with
Right.
leaves.
Do you have a name in mind for this new invention?
No.
The raker picker upper.
Yeah.
I like it. It's a good idea. That's worth staying up for.
Or like leaf it off the ground. I don't know.
I like it.
Leaf it.
I think you're onto something. I do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been thinking about inventions lately. I do have a long list of inventions,
Okay.
but I haven't pursued any of them. I've invented things before. I've invented my own rock opera before. Actually, this is no joke. Years ago, I invented this rock opera. I'm not going to tell anybody about it, but it was going to be called Rock of Ages, and that name was not taken at that time. Which,
Mhm.
of course, now it's a Broadway musical and a movie. But man, you snooze, you lose. You
I
gotta
know.
get on your pooper scooper rake right away.
I know. I'm too tired for that.
Yeah.
Someone else just pick it up and I'll buy it at Lowe's next time I go.
I got you. Well,
Free idea for somebody out there.
speaking of tired, I was in the Big Easy last week. I was in New Orleans.
Nice. NOLA.
Yes, it was fun. I hadn't been there since way pre-COVID. I actually had
Mhm.
a client who was playing for the Saints years ago, and that's the last time I was there. That might even be I don't think it was pre-hurricane, but it was pre-other disasters that they've had there.
Did you get a beignet?
I got a box of beignets so I could try my hand at making my own here, but I did not go to the Café du Monde,
Uh-huh.
if that's how you pronounce it.
Yeah, last time I was there, I got kicked out of there.
Did you?
Yeah, I was there for a formal, and it was like 11 a.m. in the morning, and I was so drunk. I was drinking gin and tonic out of like a coffee cup.
Yeah, that's a good
And
call.
I had
Goes well with the beignet.
it was like a magical time.
Yeah.
And I went in there, got a beignet, and then they have the flour or whatever it's on it, like the sugar, the powdered
Yeah,
sugar,
it's
and I
powdered
was
sugar.
basically like rolling in it, like,
Oh,
and I was such an embarrassment, and then I got kicked out. And
you got kicked out for too much
I
powdered
was
sugar.
just crazy. I mean, obviously, I was a drunk.
Maybe they thought you were on coke or something.
I don't know. I
I
was
mean-
a junior at college, so what
Yeah.
more could you expect from me?
Did your friends go with you, or
It was just me and a friend, and she was
left embarrassed?
she was
but-
also pretty drunk. So
see.
yeah, but it
Huh.
was a really fun time. It was the only time I've ever been to NOLA. I've always wanted
Yeah.
to go back.
You have to
it's
be
a
a
fu- it's
big
a fun
mess to
city.
get thrown out of a place in New Orleans when you're a cute
I know.
blonde-haired girl.
I
I'm
know.
thinking, young lady.
But like the beignet tasted so good.
Yeah, they are good. I ate a fair amount there. And the other thing, I was in a parade. I
Really?
got to be in a parade. I was
Wow.
I was there with basically a group of lawyers, that were part of the American Bar Association,
Mhm.
and I guess you can buy your own parade there. So we had a second line parade where you get a band in
Mhm.
front of you. You have a float that some of the leaders went on, and then
Were there balloons?
and this is the sad part of the parade. No balloons,
Oh.
but about I don't know, 1,000 of us
Mhm.
were leaving meetings, and we were basically going from our hotel, the Marriott New Orleans, down to the Supreme Court, Louisiana, where we were
Mhm.
having a reception. So, half a mile walk behind a float. Picture 1,000, mostly old white guys,
Attorneys.
a few
Yeah.
women, I mean, women as well, but
Mhm.
basically all dressed up in suits, maybe some beads here and there, walking down the street. And it was just the saddest parade
I know.
ever.
I was gonna say that does not sound like a parade.
No, and I mean, we had fun, relatively speaking, but I did just think with some compassion about what if there was a kid on the side of the street that said, Mommy, Daddy, look, a parade. And then there's just all these
Yeah.
lawyers going down the road.
Did
They,
you
they
did
need therapy.
did you get the big beads? Because you know how you get the big
Got
beads,
different
right?
beads, yeah.
I got the big beads, and my mom saw them, and she goes, "How'd you get the big beads?"
Right.
So
How did you get the big
whenever
beads?
you see someone with big beads, just give them a high five.
I got you because you
Yeah.
have to do something to get the beads. Yeah,
Yeah, you earn those beads.
you know what I did?
What?
I bought the beads. I don't think there's currency for me flashing anyone
Yeah.
and getting beads. I might wind up the same way you did at Cafe Du Monde.
So
So
you say New Orleans.
did I say that?
Yeah. It's
As
New
opposed,
I say New Orleans.
yeah, they say a lot of things weird there,
Yeah.
like Burgundy. They say Burgundy.
Mhm.
So I learned a lot. There's no shortage of people that will tell you things, some of
Yeah.
which may be true and some
Yeah,
of
their
which,
words are weird too. Like bio is spelled like
uh-huh.
Bayou, and
Yeah,
Go
absolutely.
Tigers is like Geox Tigers.
It's the French
Yeah,
influence.
it's odd.
But I made it back, and I'm excited about our first guest today.
Yeah, I'm very excited.
He's a neat guy, another
Another,
sports-oriented
another
one.
home run.
Can you hang?
I got all my sports lingo ready this time.
Okay, very
Yeah,
good. Well, I'm excited. I'm excited to introduce our guest to you.
yeah, me too.
My first rodeo. My first rodeo. My first rodeo.
So excited about our guest today.
Mhm.
He is someone who is near and dear to my heart, but he's also exciting, even more so in his own right. He is a broadcaster, so another guest with an amazing voice. And he has been broadcasting now. He's going to tell me if I'm wrong, but for 18 years for the Tampa Bay Rays. It was the Devil Rays when he started. Now it's the Tampa Bay Rays. And before that, he broadcast for several minor league teams. And even before that, in the college space. He is my cousin, Andy Freed, who is the play by play and sometimes color and sometimes play by play again announcer for the Tampa Bay Rays. Welcome, Andy Freed.
Welcome.
Good to talk to you both. And of course, Michael, I've known you my entire life. So
That's right. You have indeed. So, yeah, Andy lives down there in Tampa. And it's kind of funny because we do not have a sports oriented family, at least on the sides that we share. You obviously have a mother who I'm not related to by blood. Obviously, we're here to talk about your first rodeo and all the exciting things you've done. Love to talk about your first broadcast and your first major league broadcast and playoffs and so forth. But how the heck did you get into sports given the cursed genetics that the Freed side of the family has?
well, I've never actually been to a rodeo, but that is something on the list that needs to happen at some point. But no, I got into this. I mean, as you said, our family is not into sports. I mean, I've said this a million times. I could go to my father and say, "Here's $100 bill if you could tell me where shortstop is." And when I got into this, I could have kept that $100. They weren't raised with it. It just wasn't part of the family culture. And on my mom's side, they really weren't either, except my mom's brother, my uncle David, and he was into the Orioles and was into the Colts, and he brought me to an Orioles game when I was 8 years old. In fact, I could tell you it's August 9th, 1979. I think about this every August 9th. Because while I had no background in sports whatsoever, he either convinced or asked my mom if he could bring me to a game. And I remember being in the driveway and leaving, and my mom leaning into the window and said, you might want to bring a book. Maybe you'd get bored. That's how much it wasn't a part of anything we really did as a family. I had never heard of the Baltimore Orioles or the Colts or whomever. So he took me to the game, and it was really, without being overly dramatic, I was 8 years old, but it was a day that changed the course of my life. I don't know what I would have done had I not gotten into this. I really have never had a plan B. But in going to that game, it ended up really being serendipity, because not only was it a completely immersive experience, the sights, the sounds, the smells, just the whole thing, going into this giant cathedral, which was Memorial Stadium in Baltimore on 33rd Street, and just being overwhelmed with all of this sensory activity going on. But as luck would have it, from my standpoint, it was a rain delay. And during the rain delay, not only did it seem to bring out the colors and the feeling of the ballpark as rain can kind of do, we were walking around the concourse during the game, and I heard these voices, and they weren't just in my head; they were the Oriole announcers, as I found out, because I asked him, "Who is that talking? What am I hearing in my ears?" And he said, "That's the Orioles announcers. That's Chuck Thompson and Bill O'Donnell, and they're talking about the game." And something about that struck me, again, out of nowhere, like a thunderbolt, because I certainly was not expecting anything to be there, as blank a slate as possible. In fact, I've often thought that I experienced baseball the way kids did maybe in the 20s or the 19 teens or the 30s, when they
Right.
had never really seen it in person. Maybe they had read about it, or they had heard rumors about what it was like. And I remember going up the ramp, like the classic story you always hear: someone goes to the first game, you walk up the ramp, and these lights are enormous, and the ballpark is just gigantic. But it hit me. It really hit me very hard. And after I heard those announcers, I got very curious about what they were all about. So not only did the game finally start, and I was just mesmerized by it, I could tell you a lot about the game. I know that the Orioles won 3-2, and I won't bore you with all the details. But I found myself thinking about it a lot, and it suddenly became about the only thing I thought about for about the next 45 years. Once I heard that, and I started to listen to the Orioles broadcast every night, and I mean every night, that I was hooked, and that became something that became a real passion, borderline obsession.
Wow.
And I think my parents, it took them years to really understand what that was all about. And in my head, I knew exactly what I wanted to do for my career, and through a long and weaving path, it ended up actually working out. But when I think of that night, August 9th, 1979, whatever direction my life would have gone, it hit a fork in the road and went a completely different direction.
That's amazing. So, I mean, you fall in love with a game that you really probably knew very little about up to that point. Maybe you hadn't even played a Sandlot game, and but you don't decide to be a baseball player. Although I think you did play a little bit growing up, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, I played in youth leagues. I played in high school, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed playing baseball. I still love playing baseball. I did not have the bug to be competitive on the field in that sense. I mean, I enjoyed it. I wanted to win. I was probably a bad sport, like a lot of kids. I hated losing, but it didn't capture me as that would be something even possible that I would do. Nor was it really a goal. It was something about the announcers, and I became very attuned to not just sports announcers, just newscast. The news was always on in our house, and I got very attuned to the way they could connect with an audience. And a lot of this was probably more subcon or unconscious, or whatever the word would be, than actual paying close attention. But I noticed how a broadcaster could connect with an audience. And
Right.
the kind of these dual dreams. I fell in love with baseball and with broadcasting basically at the same time. And the way that Chuck Thompson in particular could connect with the audience, for those that may not remember Chuck Thompson, he was the voice of the Orioles and the voice of the Colts for decades, from the 50s until the Colts left in '84, and then continuing with the Orioles until close to when he died in 2005. His vision went at the end, but they still even had, this is how good he was. He was virtually blind by the end of his life, with macular degeneration and various other things, but he was still there because he could tell stories so well, and he connected with generations of people. And
Yeah.
I knew how I felt. I didn't know why, but I knew I felt very connected to him. And come to find out, it certainly wasn't just me. It was millions of people in and around the Baltimore area, and that's why he's in the Baseball Hall of Fame. But there was just something about the way he could connect with people that was very attractive to me. And now at this stage, I'm 51, which is hard to believe. But my goal is to try to connect with as many people and sell them on the love of baseball as Chuck certainly did for me.
Yeah, and you do, and that's sort of one of the beauties of baseball as a sport, and really baseball radio, which is what you do. That I mean, I people will bump into me and they'll say, "Are you related to Andy Freed?" Because they are Ray fans and they don't always go to the game. In fact, sometimes they never go to the game. They listen to the game. And when they go to the game, they listen to the game. People love to, in this day of technology and siloed information and just TikTok and everything else, baseball play by play and color really hasn't changed. And some people still thirst for it.
Well, I think that I heard someone say once that that baseball and radio were made for each other, and they really were. There's something about the rhythms of each that I think tie into the other one very, very well. Plus the portability of it, which is why I don't think it will ever totally go away. I mean, look, if you have a chance to go in person, if you have a chance to go to a game and watch it on TV, I mean, we've got these gorgeous HD TVs in our homes these days, and you can have an amazing experience doing that. But there is something very personal about radio, something that makes it a one-on-one connection with people. You can do it while you do other things. You're gardening around your house, you're driving in your car here in Florida, you're out on your boat. You can do other things, and that person is kind of right with you on your shoulder. And it's also the sort of thing, frankly, that with the pace of baseball, you can kind of go in and out a little bit. If someone's telling a good story and they catch your attention, you're using your imagination and it's really active listening, but maybe you're doing something else for a second, and then you hear the announcer's voice pep up a little bit. Oh, maybe something's happening right here. So the phrase that I like to use is, I want to be good company. I don't want to be someone that, I want to look at it as, if I'm talking about a baseball game, I want to be the guy that's sitting at the bar, sitting wherever, that you like to be around. That maybe will tell you a funny story here and there, that'll keep you up to date with what's happening, and hopefully do it in a nice and friendly way that you feel connected. I think radio can connect with people probably to this day still better than any other medium, because you're using your brain a lot, you're using your imagination a lot. And if the announcer is good, and hopefully those of us that are in the big leagues are, you're able to be with that person as they're doing personal, individual things in their lives. So I always find it very comforting when someone comes up to me and just says, "Hey, Andy," as if I was just talking to them. I like that. That to me feels like that they've known me for a while. When I met Chuck Thompson, I got a chance to meet him when I was an intern, and it struck me because I was talking to him and I'm like, "Oh, that's right. He doesn't know me. I only know him." But in my head, the whole time he's been with me since I was 8 years old. So I love the connection. I think there's something magic to it.
Is that ever
Yeah.
creepy?
Yeah, it is. When someone, what's weird about it is when someone says, "Yeah, I remember one time you said this," and it was something from 15 years ago, and I'm like, "I did? Oh yeah, I did." So I don't know, but most of the time it's really nice.
Liv, you have voices in your head. Do you want to get in on this conversation?
Yeah, the whole time you've been talking about baseball, I just keep thinking about ice cream and a helmet hat. I mean, that's my favorite part of every game. I mean, you can get me to any sport event if there's ice cream and a baseball hat.
Which at every baseball game there is.
My guess is that when you're having that ice cream and a baseball hat, you weren't at the game alone. You were with somebody.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I grew up a Marlins fan, but I'm also a big Reds fan. But then I have been to some Rays games because I did an internship in Tampa. So I like to go to the different stadiums and see all the different vibes because each stadium is it's cool just to do like a stadium tour.
Well, it's wonderful. And the reason I bring that up too is that it's a really good conversational game. It's something where a grandparent and a grandchild, or a parent and a kid, or two friends can connect on the same. How many things in society could really people from different generations completely connect on in the same way and have it be a comfortable, easy conversation? My son could sit there and talk to somebody that's 50 years older than him and talk about who's playing second base for the Rays today and whatever just happened in the game, and really be on an even wavelength. I think there's something special about that. And baseball, in recent years, you hear a lot about the pace of the game being a negative. I've always felt since I was a kid that the pace of the game is a positive. There are natural lulls in it that allow you to talk with the person next to you, to experience with someone else. I've always thought that was a strength, and I've often found it kind of weird that baseball has promoted itself as being, well, we're too slow of a game. I don't think so. This isn't football. This isn't a one event. This is a daily event that happens pretty much every day from March to October. So it's not like we've got together for this amazing event and sitting on every moment. It's more of a relaxed situation. I think that's a great charm of baseball, not a detriment.
Yeah, that was going to be a question I had for you was,
You can ask it now if you'd like.
do you think baseball needs to be 9 innings? Because I feel like 7 innings would be like the perfect
When would you
number.
stretch if you if you ended at 7?
Like 4.5 or 5.
Well, that is more of a midpoint. She has a point there, Andy. What
Like
do you think?
I think 7 innings would really draw the crowd in, and people would stay for the whole game.
Well, I can tell you in the minor leagues, whenever we had double headers, they were 7 inning double headers, and those nights really flew. And in baseball, starting in big league baseball since 2020, the double headers that are in big league baseball are 7 inning games. Now that was part and parcel of the pandemic, and it was that the teams were afraid of burning too many pitchers out. So it had much more of a pragmatic reason than an entertainment reason. But I think it could be interesting this year, and I'm not totally up to speed with it yet, but baseball is adopting some rules that they've been trying out in the minor leagues the last couple of years to pick up the pace of the game. So, and from what I've been hearing, is that it really worked very well in the minor leagues. So a game is going to end much sooner anyway, and it's going to have a faster pace. That's never meant anything to me. To me, I love the fact that in baseball, there was a book when I was growing up by Tom Boswell called, I'm forgetting the title, something about in baseball, time stands still. And it's true. I don't think about the time or the clock during those 3 hours or so that the game is going on. Time is measured in terms of innings. And I to alter from that now after this glorious history that baseball has, I think it would be kind of awkward.
So before we hear about your first time at the MLB, what is your favorite MLB names? Because I think that there's some pretty good ones like Savannah Bananas, the Jumbo Shrimp. What's your favorite?
Definitely be a minor league team.
Minor league. Yeah. What's your favorite minor league name?
Well, yeah, name?
Yeah.
Oh,
I think mine's the Savannah Bananas.
Keep in mind, what Andy thinks, if I'm not mistaken, and I've done thorough research on Wikipedia, he was with the Pawtucket Red Sox. I remember when you were there. Trenton Thunder, the St. Lucie Mets. I guess those were the three, right?
those were the three: the Pawtucket Red Sox, Trenton Thunder, and St. Lucie Mets.
Yeah, none of them are terribly fun names. I know even like the Jacksonville used to be Suns are now the Jumbo Shrimp. So they've all gone towards goofier names.
Like that's such a good name, the Jumbo Shrimp.
Yeah.
The Jumbo Shrimp, yes. Honestly, a lot of them have changed. When I was in the minor leagues, a fair amount of the teams were owned and operated by the big league clubs. So that's why the Mets were the Mets. And I must have thought maybe it helps, the branding and the advertising of a big league team. But a lot of them have changed. The Thunder was interesting to me because I helped to get that franchise going. I wasn't at the very beginning, but I joined in the third year of that franchise, and to see how a name and a team can really start to take root within a community was kind of fun. So the Thunder, to me, always has a warm spot. And in Rhode Island, when their AAA team was in Pawtucket, they were known as the Paw Sox because the Red Sox, that's the big league team. And what was unique about that area was it really was the same fan base. The same people that were going to the Red Sox games at Fenway Park were also going to the Paw Sox games at McCoy Stadium. So they had quite a connection there, but the Paw versus the Red made it an easier distinction.
That is interesting. I never thought about it, but a Paw sock is really just a glove when you think about it.
The gloves.
Obviously we just had the Pro Bowl last week in football, and of course they went to flag football. Is it true that the baseball All-Star game is going to go towards T-ball? They're all going to get free walks and everything? Yeah.
One of the things that I would like to see them do, because these baseball players, the things that they do, I don't know if people have the total appreciation of just how good they are at what they do. And I've seen some sports and some competitions before where they do a skills competition. And I've seen that before at minor league all-star games. And that is things like setting up a little, like a board with like a little hole, and the catchers from behind the plate can throw it all the way down to second base and sometimes get it right in that hole. I mean, what their precision, baseball is really a game of technique, repetition, and precision. So I don't know if it'll go to a T-ball thing, but you'd be amazed at how far some of these guys could hit a ball just off the tee.
Yeah, though, I mean, it's funny you say that because I kept the Freed family tradition of not being athletic and played baseball for a minute until kids could throw hard but not accurate and took one in the ribs. And I was like, this sucks. I'll join the debate club. But I do often use baseball as a metaphor, especially for my comedy career, because I've never done anything athletic or courageous, but comedy's, kind of courageous, and you fail a lot. And that's fascinating to me about baseball. I can't think of too many other things it's true where you fail most of the time, as particularly when you're hitting the ball, and then you get up the next time or the next swing, and you're certain, I presume they're certain, they're going to hit a home run or whatever the objective is. And you get to know these guys. I mean, that's going to be fascinating insight into the psyche of a person.
I never thought of a connection between baseball and comedy. By the way, you always make me laugh. I can remember being at your house and you making me laugh as a little kid. So I think you've always
Thank
been
you.
funny. But as comedians will say, you have to be able to be fearless. You have to be not afraid to fail on stage. And in baseball, it's identical because you're going to fail. Baseball is based on failure. The game moves
Right.
along when outs are recorded. So while the hitter's making it out for a pitcher, that's a victory. The old cliche in baseball is if you fail 7 out of 10 times as a hitter, you'll go to the Hall of Fame. And that is
Right.
true. The greatest hitters of all time only succeed by getting hits maybe 3 out of every 10 times. So
Right.
game is based on failure. And it's interesting you say that, what you were talking about too, where you realized, and I think we all get to that point, those of us that played as kids, you get to the point where you realize the other kids are better than you. Well, most of these players were the best player in their town, in their league, in their community. And they got through high school and they were probably the best player there. And they were either in college or in the minor leagues and they're probably the best player there. And many of them, by the time they reach the major leagues, and I've talked to our scouts and our baseball operations people, they want them to at some point learn how to fail because you're
Right.
going to in the major leagues. We had a player come up this is the one this is where I learned this, named Evan Longoria back in 2008. And he was so good in college and he was so good in the minor leagues that he had never really failed. And they wanted him to fail a little bit in the minor leagues before he got to the major leagues, where inevitably he was going to strike out. You're going to hit into a double play. You're going to make a mistake and people are going to be asking you about it. And suddenly you might have been part of the reason why you lost the game instead of always being the reason why your team won the game. So
Right.
it's a wonderful lesson in life to be able to deal with failure, and I think that's why sports psychologists are so big now, because it's difficult. It's difficult for a lot of these guys because you're not just doing it in the backyard. You're doing it in front of tens of thousands of people, and honestly, in this day and age, so many people bet on games that you're hearing it from the crowd. You're hearing it from people that might have lost money because you didn't perform well that night. And dealing with that is a real psychological hurdle that I think players and professional athletes in every sport deal with until the end of their careers.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not a game anymore at that point, but still it's got to be a game. You've got to have that, I don't know, that free spirit. And again, just the mentality to fail at something all night or most of the night or for a week and then have a moment of success, and to believe that you can. That's fascinating to me.
Well, I'm reading Joe Madden's book. Those of you that may know Joe Madden, he was manager of the Rays. He's a very good friend, and talked to him a million times over the years. And I'm currently reading his book, and I've gotten to this point where I remember him saying this over and over again. And as I'm reading it, I'm hearing his voice. And one of the things that he's always liked to tell his players is never permit the pressure to exceed the pleasure. In other words, you're doing what many people not only would like to be doing, you're doing what you've been doing your entire life, and you're doing it better than most other people on the planet. So while there may be a degree of pressure to it, always step back and enjoy it because that's why you got into it in the first place.
Right.
That always has made a lot of sense. And those that are able to do that, people talk about who are the great players under pressure, Michael Jordan or Derek Jeter, or who are the great pressure players of our lifetime in athletics. And those are the guys that they still look like they're having fun when some of the other guys don't. And
Right.
there is something to that. So there's a middle line to walk between dealing with pressure and still having a good time. That a lot of these guys, I think, because they are so young, when you get around them, when I started doing this, I was in my 20s and I was about the same age as the players that I was broadcasting. Now I'm 51, and I mean, our youngest player is 21. So, I mean, my goodness, he could be my son. He's about my daughter's age at this point. And to see what they go through in terms of the pressure, I see that theory of don't let the pressure exceed the pleasure being tested over and over again. And it's a challenge. It's a real challenge to do, to still have fun when it feels like what you're doing is life and death, even though it's not.
Yeah, yeah, and your career very much tracks that of a player. You start playing or broadcasting in college and do it at a really high level. I mean, you progressed quickly, and then you're in the minors, and then you're caught up to the majors. Talk to us about that call and your first broadcast.
Well, as strange as it sounds, I really feel like I started doing this before I got to college. We had a baseball board game in my house that a friend had turned me on to called Status Pro Baseball. I don't even know if kids still play with, board games and that sort of thing. I hope so.
Our producer here does. Tony is a nerd.
It's beautifully nerdy, and I would
It's well
sit in
rounded. Yeah.
my room and I would play these games and I would broadcast them as if I was broadcasting a real game, and I took it seriously. I mean, I would really prepare for the game in a similar way that I prepare for it now. And then the great thing was when I turned 16 and was able to drive, I would go to Memorial Stadium, and back then it was so much simpler. I remember Giant Food sponsored a $3 night at Memorial Stadium, and on a Tuesday you could go up and just get a walk-up ticket for $3, hand in 3 singles, and you get a ticket. And I'd sit at the very top of the upper deck, and I'd bring my equipment with me, and I broadcast, and I still have those tapes.
Wow.
You were a nerd and very entrepreneurial at the
Yeah.
same time.
Yeah. So by the time I got to college, I had been kind of doing it for a long time, at least in my head. No one else heard it except my parents.
Well, speaking of no one hearing, what about the people in the rows in front of you? Were they a little annoyed or no?
I remember one time my brother went with me, and
Stefan.
Cousin
And
Steph.
yeah, my brother Stefan went with me, and I remember him talking about later on that the other people were listening to me in and around. But back then, they were bleacher seats at the very, very last row of the upper deck.
Sit and see. It is first and second. Tie, tie, 6-6. Ball this time. Pitch to Grinch. Her ball, swing and a miss. Strike three. They go out in order. And 1, 2, 3 in the ninth. Here comes the third lunch chance. No runs, no hits, no errors, no rest. At the end of 8.5, it is remains Angel 6, Baltimore 5.
So those that you couldn't really do it if it was a sold out game.
That is
So
amazing.
much easier to do when there's 15,000 people in a 52,000 seat stadium.
That's kind of like you, how you modeled your career, Liv. Like Liv used to watch Martha Stewart and turn off the volume and see if she could fill in the details on how to make cupcakes. Isn't that right?
False. So
Yeah.
false. I don't even think Martha Stewart has a TV show.
Oh, well, she used to. Anyway, back to you, Andy.
But yeah, that shows some confidence that I don't think I'd have sitting in the stadium being like, "Here we go, home run, welcome back." Like, can you give us your voice that you would use when you first started? Like, what was your intro?
Oh my goodness! Those tapes are buried. I know I played them this year for my kids, and they couldn't. Even my wife couldn't believe it.
Little squealy voice.
Are they like cringing or just laughing?
Both. I'm 12 years old. I mean, what does any 12-year-old sound like in front of a tape recorder?
That's outstanding. You know what a tape recorder is, Liv, by the way?
What's that?
I was wondering if Livia knows what a tape recorder is.
Yeah, I used to record myself playing guitar.
Okay.
Um,
So so you've been preparing for this moment, but then you get the moment. I assume you maybe wondered, would you be in the minor leagues or have to go get a real job, so to speak, at some point? But that doesn't happen.
well, that was the thing too, is that I knew how serious I was about it in my mind, and it was incredibly serious, and I didn't have a plan B. So I didn't want to do anything. Nothing inspired me like this. Nothing made me as happy as this. And probably psychologically, I would be lying if I said it didn't give me a sense of self-esteem, because nobody else was into it in my family. It gave me something that was all mine. It had, I was the youngest of the two brothers, as you know, and to me, it gave me a sense of worth. It gave me a sense of purpose. Everything in my life was pointed towards this. So I never expected not to make it. I had mapped it out and planned it out how I wanted to do it, but I didn't know if it would ever happen. And like many people in my field, or maybe throughout life, there was always someone that would make it sound like, I can remember a friend of mine's father at the time saying, "What do you want to do with your career?" And I said, "I want to be a Major League Baseball broadcaster." And he was like, "Well, we all have dreams." And as a kid, that was kind of devastating. I can remember hearing different relatives or friends or so-called friends or people from the distance saying, "When is he going to stop this baseball thing and really get a real job?"
Yeah.
And in a way, it stung and it hurt, but in my mind, it was really an "I'll show you" sort of philosophy. I had this thing mapped out. The strange part about it is that it actually worked, because there's no guarantee of it ever working. In this field, so many of the people that are the announcers are either players that have retired, that have decided to go into this, and for whatever reason, they're considered to be broadcasters, even though many of them are not very good communicators in my mind. And they get the job kind of straight from the field to the booth. Or they are the son of a famous broadcaster, or have some sort of connection to it. I had zero connection to it.
Right.
So the only way I knew how to go about it was to try to do it as grassroots as possible, and that was to go to the minor leagues. And that's what I did. I went to the baseball winter meetings in my senior year of college in 1993, which was in Atlanta, Georgia. And Mike, as you know, our dads worked for the airline, so I was able to get a pass to go to Atlanta. And I got a hotel, and basically all I did was I tried to meet as many people as possible. I didn't know the term networking at the time. I didn't but what I was doing was just basically glad handing as many people as I could, general managers of minor league teams. I can remember being in the hotel lobby and accidentally bumping into so many different. "Oh, are you so and so? You're the GM of the Omaha Royals, right?" "Yeah, I know you now. I just want to say hello. I'm Andy Fried. I'm looking to get into this. Blah 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 blah." And lo and behold, you find out over the course of time that that there are many nice people out there that if they sense a young person, this is, at least has been my experience, if they sense a young person is genuine and really want to get involved in this, they'll talk to you. And I had a million phone conversations and correspondence with them, and that helped me get in the minor leagues. And that was the only way I knew how to do it. And I didn't even know if it worked. I know guys to this day that are really good announcers that haven't been able to get out of the minor leagues for whatever reason. You just haven't had a lucky break. I liken it to the actor wannabe that goes to LA and waits tables hoping to meet the right person. You might be good enough, but you may never meet that right person. I'm lucky enough to have actually met those right people that helped me along and help further a career.
You're also in a career where there's probably not a lot of turnover, so you're
Right.
gonna keep your job till you retire. So once you get in, I mean, that's also a problem.
Not to understate your success, because you
Yeah,
guys have really been
definitely.
successful.
Yeah.
But people get comfortable hearing your voice and Dave's voice. It's your co-host. But is she right that that's you curse on air or root for the other team, that might hurt, but by and large, people like your voice because you are the voice of the Rays.
A beauty of what has happened here is that my broadcast partner, Dave Wills, and Dave's from Chicago, and Dave had been doing some pre and post game show work with the Chicago White Sox, and he also had come from the minor leagues with the Kane County Cougars in the Midwest League.
That's a good name, by the way, King County Cougars. We'll put that on the list.
We were hired on the same day. We didn't know each other, but we were hired on the same day. And when we were hired and we got to the Devil Rays, we realized in what poor shape the franchise really was in. When we got here in 2005, it was only about a 7-year-old franchise. And not only were they not successful on the field, ownership had made a lot of mistakes within the community. The owner, Vince Namoli, was a really interesting guy. He was a guy that got the franchise, but he probably wasn't the right guy to run the franchise. And the franchise was in really poor shape. Not only were they buried in the division on the field, having to constantly play against Yankees and Red Sox and teams that were much better fitted for success and with long histories within their communities, but the Rays made a lot of mistakes within their community down here in Tampa Bay. My point of bringing it up is we were fortunate to get kind of on the ground floor of something when the new ownership took over. Stu Sternberg bought the Rays in October of 2005. As he did and was able to turn the franchise around, suddenly this franchise that was, I can remember David Letterman on his top 10 list would use the Tampa Bay Devil Rays as a punchline. And, if you're the punchline routinely on a,
You mean like Jacksonville, like the Jaguars?
exactly, then you're pretty much entrenched as being a symbol of failure, which is what they were. The cool thing was, as they turned it around, those in the front office, the ownership, the players, the manager, all that stuff, Dave and I were in the right place at the right time. So now we got to be associated with the winning part of the franchise, the team that has connected very well within the area, and not so much a part of the years that didn't go so well. So I think we got very lucky, and we were just at the very beginning of a new team. A lot of times when guys are hired to be a part of any sport, of any type of sports franchise, you got to learn the history of the team. You better know, who played shortstop back in 1967, or
Right.
else, your fan base will know that you're kind of a fraud. We didn't have to learn hardly anything. There
Right.
was very little history of the Devil Rays, and what it was atrocious. So people were really happy to move on to a new era, and Dave and I happen to be, and our owner likes us, and we like him, and we get along great, and now we've been here. This will be our 19th year, and we've always been around a pretty successful franchise. We're very lucky.
Yeah, and I've met Dave, a really nice guy. I know you guys are close. You guys do something interesting to me. I don't know if that's unique, but you guys alternate play-by-play and color. I don't know if there's a format to it. I feel like when I visited you and you were kind enough to let me sit in the booth, you guys were actually alternating innings at the time. But how did you guys come up with that format, and what are you doing now?
What was kind of interesting, because baseball's an odd number, as you were talking about, Olivia, it's 9 innings, so it's hard to make it even. Steven, right?
Livy's not really good at math. You see if it's well, I'll explain it to you off air.
That's right. When we were hired in 2005, not to bore you or go too inside, but the rights of the broadcast had been owned by the radio station. When we were hired, the Rays themselves took the rights in-house. So while they obtained the rights to it, they had never done it before. So when we were hired, they didn't know exactly what or how they were going to do this. And I can remember the guy that hired me said, "How do you guys want to divide up innings?" And I decided to call a friend of mine, John Miller, was one of
Yeah.
my mentors with the Orioles. We're still, very friendly. And I called him up and I said, "They're leaving this up to us. We're hired to do the same amount of innings. How would you recommend doing that?" And he goes, "The easiest way to do it is one day, one guy does innings 1, 2, 5, 6, and 9. The other guy does 3, 4, 7, and 8. And the next day, just flip it. And then extra innings, just alternate extra innings. That way, at the end of the year, everybody's done pretty much the same amount of innings." So I suggested
Did,
that.
did neither of you have a? I mean, those are different skill sets, color versus play-by-play. Did one of you have a greater propensity or gift for the other?
I don't think necessarily, because it's all about communication and respect for the other person. There is something to be said about chemistry, and I've never been able to really put my finger on it, why some people have chemistry and others don't. For whatever reason, well, the 2 announcers that were with the Devil Rays before us did not have good chemistry, and that's kind of why they were let go. Dave and I, from day one, for whatever reason, just really clicked. I remember that we met each other at a fan fest for then the Devil Rays in 2005. and we just got along really well. And we went out to dinner that night to get to know each other. We both had daughters. We both came from the minor leagues. We were just a very similar backgrounds. And what was really kind of weird about it was we were hired. I moved my family down there. At the time, I had a just under 2-year-old daughter and my wife, who moved down from Rhode Island. Dave moved down before his wife. We're getting everything settled in. And the owner says, this is Vince Naimoli. He goes, I want these guys to go to spring training and do a practice game together, just, into a tape recorder. And we were like, huh? Does this mean like if it doesn't go well, we have to leave? I mean, you already do this. But anyway, we maybe it wasn't the worst idea in the world, because we had a tape recorder, and I've done that a million times, and Dave's been behind the mic a million times, and we broadcast part of a spring training game. I think we did 2 innings, and it just seemed very natural. Where he left off, I seemed to pick up. Where I left off, he seemed to know my rhythms. And it worked for whatever reason. It was, and we've been best friends ever since. Our families are tight. And for whatever reason, and maybe it's just luck, because sometimes you can do your best to try to match 2 people together, and they just don't get along for whatever reason. Dave and I get along really well, and always have. I mean, we go to lunch together most days on the road, not because we have to, but just we enjoy each other's company.
Yeah, it's kind of like us and how we started.
That's true.
Full
That's true.
circle.
Chemistry, exactly.
Yeah.
We should talk into tape recorders more. It's funny in a narration. I don't know if you're like I am. I'm obviously a few years older than you.
and-
Literally talking into a tape recorder right now.
Yeah, it's true. I guess we
Yeah.
are. But one of my influences growing up, probably you and I were in the same generation, of course, is the Wonder Years. I mean, the wonderful sitcom where it's being narrated, and I generally walk around, confession from my therapist, hearing things be narrated, and I don't know if that's just me and the voices in my head, but
You told me you broke up with a girl because she used to narrate things.
oh yeah, I don't want somebody else.
And
like,
now,
well, it wasn't my thoughts. She was narrating her thoughts. That's very different. But so talk about we're lawyers and other stuff. But
yeah, and
like,
other stuff.
and sometimes I'll talk like a lawyer, to wife, girlfriend, and not good to have both of them at the same time. Or, but do you ever find? I mean, you are a wonderful speaker. You got this great voice. How do you turn off the play-by-play announcing when you get home? And do you ever find that you're really thinking about your answers when you're trying to be a human rather than a broadcaster?
To me, the key to being a good broadcaster is to put as much of yourself out there as possible. So I really don't, and I've really consciously I had to work at it for a while in the early years to not be in broadcaster mode, so to speak, to speak as naturally as I think that's how you connect with people. Chuck
Right.
Thompson didn't turn on some broadcaster. The image of a broadcaster is you're back in the 1930s and he leans in and he's got his hand over his ear and he leans in, ladies and gentlemen, now the news. The Ted Baxter sort of
Sure.
live. You don't know Ted Baxter, but that was like the announcer on the Mary Tyler Moore Show.
I remember.
And
Good
that to me would be the most embarrassing thing in the world, is to go around acting as if I'm Mr. Announcer Boy. I don't put anything on. One time John Miller had sent me aside when I was an intern, and he said, more than anything else, you got to figure out what makes you unique. Don't try to be me. Don't try to be Vin Scully. Don't try to be Jack Buck. Don't try to be Mel Allen or Red Barber. They already were those guys. They were
Right.
good because they were genuinely themselves. Figure out over the course of time, through your minor league days, what makes you good, what makes you unique, what makes you think that someone might have an interest in what you're saying. What I came to realize over the course of time is I can bring something to the booth that nobody else can, and that's me. And that's the same thing for every broadcaster out there, that I hope that they're genuinely bringing their life experiences and the things that they have to say or commentate on into the booth. Dave and I are both the same way. I don't think I could be phony if I tried. I'm lucky that I have a genuine love for what I do. And also, I think in terms of voice, I think a lot of that has gone away from broadcasting. I think as long as you're not an irritating voice. I think the broadcast world is full of people with different kinds of voices. If you're leaning on just your voice, then you should be a voiceover guy.
Yeah.
If you have something to say, then maybe you can really be, a broadcaster. I have an equal love for the skill of broadcasting as I do for baseball. One person that I just get amazed by is Howard Stern. I think what he does on the radio in a natural sense really loosened up the airwaves. I think you can listen to the way radio was before and after him, just a very natural, non-broadcastery, sometimes not even super professional kind of sound, but it's unique and it's genuine and it comes across that way. So I've used part of that in my own experience, is try to be as real and genuine and just me as possible. And if people like it, that's great. If they don't, there's really nothing I can do. You'll never please everybody.
Yeah.
You'll find somebody that doesn't like what you do. Fortunately now for Dave and I, because this will be our 19th year, we've crossed over generations. There are people now that have been listening to us since they were kids. While that's a bit of a shock to both of our systems that it's been that long, they've grown up listening to you. So, I listened to Chuck Thompson from the time I was 8 until my 30s. And now Dave and I are kind of getting to that point where people have been listening to us for a long time and associate with what we do with a successful team. So the less broadcastery and the more genuine, I think that's really the key to being.
That's neat. So you don't have to fake it at home because you're being yourself on air, and I can certainly attest to that. I've known you approximately 51 years, and you are the sweetest, nicest, most humble person. You were that as a kid, and you've been that as an adult, and you've had tremendous success, and you've continued it. So I got a last question for you, Andy. August 9th, 1979, your first baseball game, your Orioles game. You talked about people growing up with a team and then having to adopt or adopting another team. Talk about your first game in the stadium, broadcasting for your Rays, but playing against the Orioles.
Well, against the Orioles was interesting because it was at Camden Yards, and I had interned with the Orioles. The last 2 years at Memorial Stadium and the first 2 years at Camden Yards, I remember being on the initial tour of Camden Yards, like a media tour, before even all of it was painted and before all the billboards were up and before, I don't even remember if the field was actually in at that point. So I remember going to that site when we were kids. My father, who Mike, of course, you know very well, and he refused to pay to park when we'd go downtown. So often we'd find a field or some distant parking lot to leave the car. And I can remember
Sure.
at one time it was in a field, and I looked back on it, and it was near Camden Station, and we parked in what was, I guess, I don't know, somewhere around right center field right now. So I had a kind of a personal history with that place, and to be able to do a game there, having been an intern, and being able to listen in to John and Chuck and some of the other Oriole announcers over the years, and other announcers that I got a chance to meet, like Ernie Harwell, and people that I really idolized, and then to be like allowed in now, and wow, that's the same booth. I'm like, they're expecting me to go in that room right now and broadcast just like they did. That was a real nice feeling of satisfaction that I don't think will ever wear off. And if it does, and it's time to retire, I still feel incredibly fortunate that this has not only been a way to enjoy my life, but a way to raise a family. I mean, they actually give me a paycheck for this.
Yeah.
I've done it as a side gig.
Yeah, well, congratulations on a great career so
Yeah.
far, and just being a great ambassador of baseball and of the Freed name. And thanks for making time for us.
Yeah, thank you so much. You're definitely a testament to follow your dreams, even if they're crazier than most. But thanks for coming on. Definitely loved having you.
I always try to always want to say that I want to leave baseball better than the way I found it, and I want to leave the Freed name even better than the way we found it. So
Well, that was a low bench, but
Yeah.
you've done well notwithstanding. I love you, cuz. I'll talk to you later.
okay.
Bye.
My first rodeo. My first rodeo. My first rodeo.
was a strikeout. I mean, I guess that's wait, is that bad in
A
baseball?
strikeout would
Oh,
be bad unless
that-
he was pitching. If he was pitching, then it'd be good
yeah,
if he struck out the other
must have, he
team.
was pitching because he striked out. That was good. He hit on so many things on baseball wise that just like stuck with me.
Yeah, you
Like-
know, and I didn't know a lot of that. I mean,
Yeah.
we're cousins, but don't see him a lot, and have followed him really from afar, like a lot of people
Yeah.
do. He's really famous within the space of people that love the Rays or that know
Yeah.
broadcasting. He's just done a really good job.
He brought up 2 points that I think both you and I could totally understand in our own world.
All right.
Okay, the first one is when he was walking into the booth for the first time he was broadcasting.
Yeah.
There's very few times you feel like that euphoric feeling of like, holy crap, I made it.
Mm-hmm.
And like that just resonated with me because I remember got into UF Law, I'm sitting there and I just remember seeing like,
Mhm.
and like, I'm sure you felt that way when you went into law school or your first time it's just that
Mhm.
feeling that like, if you feel it and you're listening, you know exactly what I'm talking about, but you're looking and whether you're like working at Disney or something, you see the logo and you're just
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, like if I were to see myself
Yeah.
5 years ago where my dream is, like you wouldn't have believed it.
Yeah, no, it's definitely weird. And you could see him having that moment. But at the same time, I didn't remember him broadcasting when he was 12 years old up in the stands at Memorial Stadium.
Yeah.
There's a certain sense of him, and I would have to say, to some extent, both as a lawyer and as a comic, I have a unnecessary and not justifiable confidence. Hopefully not arrogance, but like it seems like he could see his destiny. And then he claimed
Yeah.
it. And sometimes,
Even if
I
it
feel that
seems-
way.
I'm sure he felt like it was unattainable sometimes.
Yeah.
And we've all felt that way, especially if you're a high shooter. And when you finally get there, it's like, okay, it was all worth it. All the
Yeah.
tears, all the sweat, all the hours. So I think he just shows us, like, okay, even if your dream is crazy, just go to it. If you make it, just take in that moment, take that breath, look around you, and be
Mhm.
like, wow, okay.
Yeah, he
That was
definitely
good.
appreciates it and is grateful. So
Yeah.
you said he made 2 good points. Do you
Yeah,
remember
and
the
then
other one?
well, you actually kind of made it. You
Oh,
were
good.
asking him when you get home, do you
Oh,
basically
right.
do you walk in the door and say, "Hello, it's dinner time.
Right.
Let's sit down at the table." Like, and that hits hard on like I think you or I because we both speak a completely different lingo than most people as attorneys.
Mhm.
And it's hard because when I go home to Weston and when you go home to your girlfriend or even your kids and we're like
Right.
logical reasoning and
Yeah.
it is
Stop
just
lawyering me.
yeah, stop lawyering me. And Weston always
Yeah.
says, stop treating me like a client when we're fighting. And sometimes
Yeah.
when even I won't get emotional at all. And he's like, you should feel
Do you send
emotional.
him a bill? Is that what he's talking about?
Right? No, it's like I don't get emotional about things I should probably get
Yeah.
emotional about. But
Right,
it's because I see
right.
like, well, logic, like, I don't know. And
No, you're right. And I think that's one of the problems with law school. You'll often hear, I'm sure you heard, that law school teaches you to think like a lawyer.
take
Great,
the emotion out of everything.
but not as a human. Whereas Andy clearly approached broadcasting as how does he bring Andy to broadcasting
Yeah.
rather than how does he think like a broadcaster.
Yeah.
So proud of my cuz.
Yeah. He's
So,
cool.
yeah, I'm glad you got to meet him. And another great show, guys.
Another great show.
This show brought to you by Tony's Mustache. Tony's Mustache is available for kids' birthday parties. If you want to rent it out, just reach out to My First Rodeo and ask for Tony.
Yep.
See you guys next week.
Bye.